Hello, everyone, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and welcome to the review of Mike and Nick and Alice, the new science fiction action comedy which stars Vince Vaughn, James Marsden, and Eiza González. This is a film that is set in the criminal underworld, and it follows two gangsters and a woman they love trying to survive the most dangerous night of their lives, in which a time machine is involved. This film is available on Hulu for streaming, and it dropped on March the 27th. And this is the perfect streaming movie. Friday night, Saturday, lounging around the house, looking for something to watch. Movie, Mike and Nick and Alice. That's that is premium viewing for you. I had a good time with this movie. It's not a knock your socks off, reinventing the wheel type movie. Uh, the science fiction of it all is very minimal. It's just because of time machine, there is time travel involved in this story, but it's not really a science fiction movie. It's more of an action comedy. Well, more comedy than action, but they do have some heavy action sequences in this film. It's nice. It's cute. It's one of those movies you look at, it is like, oh, I had a good time with it. It's not much to hate on in this film if you fully understand what you're signing up for. As far as the comedy of it all, Vince Vaughn, what he's going to deliver. We've seen him time and time again. Wedding Crashers, Dodgeball, The Breakup. That comedy style that he has is in full display here in double doses, I would say, because he's playing dual roles here as future Nick and present Nick, and he does a real good job handling that. We're just off the heels of an actor winning Best Actor at this year's Academy Awards, that being Michael B. Jordan, for playing dual roles. But in his case, he played two different people. He played identical twins with two different personalities. Here, you have Vince Vaughn playing the exact same person, just in different periods of time. I think they're 6 months apart. The future Nick went back in time 6 months. I think that's what I heard right in the film. Yeah, it is 6 months. And I think he did a pretty decent job, other than, I would say, present Nick was very stoic, whereas future Nick was more loose, very, very outgoing, very open in his feelings and all that good stuff. But you can understand with the story they're telling, because of what happened on this particular night that he went back to, changed his life, and he's a different person ever since that. And so it was flushed out fairly well, I believe, and that element of the story was very entertaining. I really did like that. I liked James Marsden in this film. I always do like it. I mean, he's one of those unsung heroes in film, going all the way back to X-Men as Scott Summers, Cyclops, and other films that he in. But my favorite James Marsden performance is in a film that you wouldn't expect to come out my mouth, but I loved his performance in it, and it was Sex Drive, the little teen sex comedy that came out about 20 years ago, maybe longer than that. But it was he was the funniest part of that movie, and I cannot not watch that movie because of him. It's something about his comedic timing, and he doesn't come off as a comedic actor, at least around that time, because it was around the same time as the X-Men films, and that was a very, very different character that he played in Sex Drive, and it was so funny. And it's still, and from that moment on, when he pops up in comedies, I just die laughing. Loved him in Death at a Funeral, the remake, the American remake of it. He was hilarious in that, and it really cemented in my mind of him being just great comedic actor. And of course the Sonic films and so on. And there's no exception here. This was more subtle than those past performances that I listed. You know, he isn't the real goofball funny guy that's walking around clueless to what's going on. That's not the case here. He plays a real grounded character that is funny, but is lethal. You know, being this hitman gangster type. Uh, Elsa Gomez, I think, is the weakest part as far as the cast is concerned. And I like her. I like her in a lot of films. She wasn't horrible in the movie. She wasn't bad in the movie, but some scenes I just didn't buy. You know, the chemistry between her and James Marsden was great. I love the scenes that they had together, the chemistry that they have together, bouncing off of one another. But aside from that, the scenes with her and Vince Vaughn didn't really get there with me. They didn't have real chemistry, I felt, in the film. Now, their characters didn't either, so maybe it's radiating off of that, but I just didn't feel the connection on screen between those two actors. Great to see Keith David in this movie as the villain. Keith David is a national treasure and should be protected at all costs, in my humble opinion. As I said, the story was pretty basic, but it was a nice story, good story. The script, it was cut and paste, but it was easy to flow. It flowed pretty good. As far as the story, you know, it wasn't too complicated, you know, dealing with the time travel and all that elements there, but it was a decent script. Now, as far as the direction, there's some question marks there. There are some directing choices that honestly made me scratch my head. I was wondering, why are you going in slow motion in this part? Why are we and it wasn't normal slow motion. I had to stop. I thought it was my TV. Honestly, the way it looked. I don't know. Maybe it was, but I don't think it was, because it happened at certain points in the movie where I guess historically you'll have slow motion in certain action sequences, but it just didn't look good. It looked bad. It was just bad looking slow motion. You could tell it was done in post. They didn't shoot it that way, but they slowed it up in post, I guess for dramatic reasons. I don't know. I don't know, because like I said, I thought it was my TV, but I watched it twice. I watched it in two separate locations, and it did the same thing. So I'm like, oh, so that's the movie. It's not my, it's not my internet. And so it made me wonder what was the reasoning behind these choices here. And there were some cutaways and pacing issues throughout that kind of threw off the movie. I mean, the movie was heading in a good direction to be a step above a basic streaming movie, but then it was like they got a note from the studio like, whoa, we can't make this look like a theatrical release. Let's tone it down a little bit on this here. That's the way it looked in periods throughout the film. The ending kind of caught me, whereas I'm like, I'm of two sides of the coin. I felt the ending, but before we got to that ending, I was so upset. I did not like the way the movie ended or arrived at the climax. The two Knicks, and slight spoiler, of course this don't ruin the end, but the two Knicks, they go in like Rambo style in this gangster's house, and they're just slaughtering people. And then once they finish that, you know, we get to the next scene, and something happens so quick. Like, okay, you just went through all of this, and then this happened. You know, it's dumb. It was dumb. But then after that, in the following scene, it was such an emotional scene that came out of nowhere because this was a comedy. It's a dumb. I mean, you had characters in here that there's literally a character in this movie called Dumbass Tony, and he's truly a dumbass. And the movie is that it's silly and it's not meant to take itself seriously, and nor did it try to. And so, you know, when we get to the one of the final scenes where it was kind of emotional, I must say. It was a heartfelt moment at the very end that just, and it's not, this ain't a negative, this is not a knock. It just came out of nowhere, and I was just floored by, number one, Vince Vaughn's performance, which I shouldn't be shocked because it isn't like Vince Vaughn is this, he's just been in comedies his whole career. Let's not forget, the man was in Psycho, he was in Heartbreak Ridge, he was in uh Jurassic World, the Lost World, I think. No, Jurassic Park, The Lost World. I get them mixed up. And you know, he's been in dramatic films, Psycho. So he can act. He can act. And bruh, that scene that I'm talking about in the end, his final scene in the movie was just beautiful. It was a beautiful scene, along with James Marsden in that scene. And Eiza González. She was great in that scene. All four of them. All four of them were great in that scene. And, bruh, I mean, I actually got teary-eyed in that scene. Didn't expect that to come. Overall, I really did enjoy the movie. I think it's a good one. This is one of those movies I can honestly put on the repeat viewing list. I can sit down and watch this again. You know, doing chores around the house or bored on a Sunday afternoon, you know, when it ain't football season. Yeah, I'll watch this again. It was that good, and it was funny. It had its funny moments where I was literally laughing out loud. Mike and Nick and Alice gets a letter grade of a C plus. Yeah, I think it's a above average streaming movie that's just below a theatrical film and a slightly better than your normal streaming movie that you'll find on Netflix, Hulu, or Prime Video. You know, I think it's worthy watch for all of you out there. But I would like to know, what did you think of Mike and Nick and Alice? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube, as well as liking this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of Hulu's new action comedy science fiction film, Mike and Nick and Alice. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.